Coming up to the top of the hour to welcome everyone to our webinar, which is Best Practices in Improving Call Center Performance. So we've got a kind of, I think, a very nice take on it in terms of the agenda. Delighted to welcome back two speakers who've previously spoken on our webinar program. And we're going to be dividing it up into two specific areas. Delighted to welcome you back, Guy Fielding from Horizon 2. And Guy, you're going to be talking through the human aspects of performance and looking at what humans are good at and what technology is good at.
Well, I'm going to try to, and I suppose what I'm trying to do is to put a frame around the webinar. I think if you like, the big question we're all trying to address is how do we make use of the technologies available and maybe coming down the track in order to deliver better customer experiences. And I think we've a danger of children in a sweet shop of grabbing any technology that comes because it's glittery and exciting. We do need a kind of overall map, an overall set of understandings as to why are we wanting to use this technology and how can we best use it. And that's the frame I'm hoping to suggest, or at least get people thinking about. And I have to confess that I get a little bit into that and then get to the hard bit, and that's the point I'm hoping that Ed will come along and rescue me.
Well, wonderful. Well, we're going to jump between those two to Megan Jones on the news desk, who's going to be looking at the top tips and questions you got from the audience. And then as Ed Creasy from NICE Systems, you head up the NICE's consulting practice, and you're going to be looking at 3 best practice examples of improving contact center performance.
I am. I'm representing the sweet shop today, I guess, and I'm going to share just 3 techniques which I believe show a combination of human design, but with the scalability and efficiency of the system of a computer. So hopefully it will work well.
Wonderful. Well, just a reminder to everyone, we're going to be carrying on the discussion this week in the chat room. That's at callcenterhelper.com/chat. We do have a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates, your choice, for the best tip. And I will ask Guy Fielding, Guy, at the end of the webinar, would you pick a winning tip?
Of course.
Please, that we'll ship that off to. If you can use the hashtag #question if you're going to ask a question, #tip if you're asking a tip. And here's the address, callcenterhelper.com/chat. Just put in the first name, the last name, and your email. And a lot of people do find it quite useful to have put the 2 windows side by side on your screen so you can see both things that are going on. And then when you're logged in, if you just click this link here, download webinar slides, you'll be able to get to both Guy and to Ed's presentations. And if you want to watch a recording of the webinar, later on this afternoon, we shall have the full webinar recording, and by Monday we'll have made our 10-minute edited highlights. So you'll be able to see that through the same link, callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. So I'd like you to dive into the chat room now, and I'd like to ask the question in 1 or 2 words, what is your biggest barrier to improving contact center performance? So is it getting staff to buy in? Is it getting technology to work? Is it getting budget? If you'd just like to type into the chat room in 1 or 2 words, what is your biggest barrier to improving contact center performance? Laura says it's budget. Lee says it's motivation and budgets. Lisa says the majority of our agents are seasonal, so ramping up training is difficult. Jackie also says budget. Amanda says staff buying in. Lee says outdated technology. Michael also complains about technology, as does Kurt. Claire says the biggest barrier is they're under-resourced. Angie says budget. Nellie says motivation. Richard says it's agent attrition. Barbara says under-resourced. Rachel says motivation. Poor IT platform says Matt. Definitely budget, says Serafina. And Coletta says resources and training. So sort of budget comes up quite tight on that head. Technology comes up quite there, and then resourcing and motivation seem to be the 2 topics there. How do you find it? How easy is it to unlock budget these days, do you think?
Well, there's two types of budget. We see there's budget for those critical systems that you can't switch off, and those are the systems that don't really help with customer engagement. And there's a new budget coming in, which people are calling business technology, where they're the technology investments that actually improve the customer journey, and they are actually growing. So it's a more complex picture. The other thing is we're seeing the business buying technology more than the traditional IT departments. That's where I am of the dark side. I am from the technology world, because you see the trend of budgets being such a precious call center, so there is a focus in my world to make things more efficient, to do more with what you have currently.
Well, we're going to be jumping across to a slightly different topic now. Guy, in a little while, will be mentioning in his presentation about customer effort. So I just want to run a quick poll, which is, do you measure customer effort in your contact center? So the answers are yes, no, or not sure. So it'd be quite fascinating to see this. I've never quite answered this. So do you measure customer effort in your contact center? And if you are measuring customer effort, it would be good if you could put it into the chat room. How do you go about measuring that? Is there a question you ask? Is it a survey? How do you do that? If you could type those answers into the chat room, will be quite interesting. I know, Guy, you've written quite extensively on customer effort. There was a very great article you did for us about 2 years ago called Debunking the Customer Effort Score, which has proved to be incredibly popular on the site. So let's have a look at the answers. So we have 18% of our audience are saying yes, they're measuring customer effort, and 53% are saying no. So Guy, any surprises in that?
First of all, it's very interesting, and I'm grateful for people for giving that survey data. I assumed, given how much attention has been given to customer effort and how central it turns out to be in terms of customer experiences, there would be many more people saying we're measuring this. Yeah. I wonder, and maybe you can help with this later, but I wonder whether the problem there is how exactly do you do that? And that, I think, is the kind of second order problem of we might want to do it, but actually working out how to do it is quite problematic.
So if we've put the question up on the screen, how is it that you measure customer effort? Let's have a look at some of the answers coming back. Andrew says, yes, we measure customer effort in an IVR survey, host inbound calls. Be interested to know what question you ask on how you measure the customer effort, how you calibrate that. Lee says through IVR surveys. Richard says through IVR surveys post-call. So that seems to be quite a common one at the end of the call going across. Abiodun says they measure it through outbound calls. And Laura says, yes, we measure it with an after-service survey. So I'm not quite sure what question is being asked there. I think Angie's typing that in currently. So it does seem to be quite immediate. And Angie says the question is, how easy was it for you to get in touch with a customer contact or contact center advisor?
Yeah, I think that's very interesting, that last question, which in a way illustrates part of the problem, which is from the customer's point of view, their journey may have started several steps back. Yeah. Before they ever picked up the phone, they have commenced their journey. So just finding the number, finding which number to phone of the 5 that are available, and then of course actually dialing the number is the easy part. It's actually explaining to the agent what the problem is, and then being taken through the 97 different hoops that they have to jump to before they get the answer. That constitutes customer effort. So I think we often tend to focus on a very small bit of the customer's journey. And we may be great at that, but that's not what the customer focuses on.
So it sounds like there's some customer journey mapping needed overall. Well, we're going to pass the baton across to Guy Fielding from Horizon 2. And Guy's going to take us through a fascinating trawl looking at contact center best practices, and in particular looking at the role that humans and the role that technology has to play in that. So we'll just pass the baton across to Guy. And Guy, if you'd like to take us through your thoughts.
Yes. Well, as I said, I see the frame that I'm trying to provide here is to say we do have lots of technologies and lots of ideas about how things should be done in contact centres, and I wanted to provide a frame of how do we make choices amongst those available options in order to improve the customer experience. And I want to give an idea of some principles that might help us to do that. I think there are three basic questions that we have to ask. The first one is a kind of analytic question, and it's a very simple but fundamental one, which is, well, what makes a good customer experience? Unless we understand that, and if you like, what the baseline answer to that is, I think we're going to struggle. We can make up answers, but we do need to understand that. The second thing is that we have lots of different technologies available, and not just technologies, but processes and people. And we have to have some kind of understanding of each of those components and how they can be used, indeed, how they can best be used. And then thirdly, and this is the hard bit, I think, which is, given those understandings, we have to leave analysis behind and actually do some design, some creativity, use our imaginations. We actually have to put those pieces together to build the customer experience. And if you like, that's, to me, the great black hole of contact centres that we've not been good at. Let me take each of these in turn. The first one is, what makes a good customer experience? And we've had various answers offered in terms of Net Promoter Score and customer effort and so on. And I think what we can now understand is that it's a bit more complicated than that. Isn't life always a bit more complicated? But there are some understandable components. The first is, actually, does the customer get their job done? I think a very important thing for us to understand is that people don't ring contact centres for fun. Well, if they do, you've got some very funny customers. But they are ringing you because they've got a problem and they think you can be part of the solution. So the fundamental question for customers is, did I get my job done, or did I make progress in getting that done, and did I make as much progress as I expected and hoped for? The second question is, how hard did I have to work in order to get that done? And there's a kind of, yes, I got my job done, but I am now a quivering wreck, and that's the end of my working day because I'm exhausted. We want the job done, but we need it to be reasonably easy, reasonably convenient. There's a third element, which is, if we talk to people, we want them to be essentially pleasant, polite, warm, understanding. So the human contact element, if it occurs, is important. Of course, you can actually kind of bracket that and say, well, sometimes we don't have any human contact. That's fine. There's a fourth thing which I think we have completely lost sight of, which is that when you ask people about their experience, they are not statisticians who do a neat averaging of the 15 minutes of the call. What they are struck by is the theatre of the experience. And the theatre, broadly speaking, is what happened right at the beginning. First impressions count. Was there somewhere where they went, wow, that's brilliant, thank you, and what happens right at the end? Recency is a very powerful driver of what we recall about experience. What we're not good at those things in the contact centre. And what we seem to be able to do is to generate turn-offs. And turn-offs are the oh no moments, the things that go wrong and the customer goes, I can't believe that. When you are listening back to that call or that transcript, you're putting your head in your hands and going, oh no, oh no. The problem with these negative experiences is they will wipe everything else out. They have about 9 to 10 times the power of an equivalent positive experience. There's something very funny about this equation, which is that in a way, getting it right doesn't help you very much. When if you get the task done, you just say, yep, that's what I expected, that was pretty good. It was easy, yeah, that was what I expected, that was pretty good. These things really kick in when they go wrong. So when customer surveys come in, they're very often because the person didn't get their job done, you made it hard work, the agent wasn't pleasant, the theatre wasn't there, or it was bad theatre, or there was an oh no moment. So in a way, when things go well, this is a series of that's okay. When things go badly and you fail on each of those, that's when you really remember the customer experience. Now, I had a personal experience yesterday. Don't people always talk about contact centres? But for a particular reason, I have to get myself to the Isle of Harris in the Outer Hebrides from London by tomorrow midday. I have to tell you that it was a nightmare. I had to book flights, I had to book hotels, I had to get car hire, and so on. I tried doing this through an extremely large international airline called British Airways, and I didn't even get the first stage done. Their systems defeated me. Right at the other end of the process, I talked to a little hotel on the west coast of the Isle of Harris, facing 2,000 miles of the Atlantic, and talked to a woman who said, yes, I've got a room, it will cost you X. Can I ask you why you're only staying one night? I told her, and she said, oh, well, I'll do it at a different price for you then, and gave me a wow moment. And when I said to her, do you need my credit card? She said, no, no, don't worry about that. Now, what that taught me was that there is a baseline for a good experience. That is, it should be like talking to a dedicated, smart, warm, empathic, trustworthy human being. And every time we put technologies in place, we should be saying, is this at least as good as that or better?
Yeah.
And if it isn't, is there a trade-off which makes it worthwhile? So I'll leave you with that thought in terms of what is this stuff called customer experience that we're trying to create. Let me move on, or no, I won't move on. I'll go back to the news item we've just been talking about, which just demonstrates that. The first two items in the headline of customer service warning by Ofcom is customers have a task, can they get it done? Answer, no. We've got a problem. Are you making it easy for them to do it? Answer, no, we've got a problem. So it's a very nice illustration of the power of that equation.
And even just simple stuff like, a lot of organizations who claim to be very customer-centric, you go on the website, you've got a problem, then bury the telephone number, make it very hard to find the telephone number, which makes it very difficult to resolve the task.
Absolutely. Well, and in fact, that's a beautiful lead-in. Thank you, Jonty. Which is this? We've added technologies in the form of additional channels, and I think, if you like, we've done that without keeping that customer experience in mind. One of the obvious things about channels now is there are hundreds of them, and they are proliferating. And if you like, there's a tendency to say, isn't that wonderful? And secondly, me too, I want one of those. It's back to the kid in the toy shop. And we're, hang on, whoa, why do we want these additional channels? And I think there are three things that we can ask or note about this. First of all is, yes, people like choice, but choice involves effort. So there's a kind of paradox here, which is we're saying, let's help the customer get their job done, but let's make it easy, and then we are facing them with multiple choices. If choice involves effort, you need to be very careful about the number and nature of the choices that you offer. The second thing is that actually the real problem about the channel is switching from one channel to another. And if I just give you an example of this, this is the London tube map. And what's interesting about the London tube map, which in a sense we all know but haven't realized what's happening, is that what it maps is the interchanges between channels. Why? Because those are the critical points. These are the points where it's hard work, where you're likely to go wrong, where you've got to make decisions, and so on, where you can get lost. If you think about people's tube experiences, they don't notice the bit between the stations. So I think one of the things we must focus on in this new world of multi-channel is the switches between, as well as, and indeed more than, the channels themselves. And I think there's a final point to note about channels, which is that there's a key piece of analysis, which is what is the nature of the task, what are the capabilities of the channel, and how do we best put those together? Now, we as Horizon 2, we looked around and we cannot see a kind of off-the-shelf methodology to do that. And so have developed a methodology which we think tackles that problem. How do you best match particular tasks to particular channels? If anybody wants to talk to us about that, I'd be delighted. End of sales pitch, I apologize. Okay, so what's the next idea of this is most of the systems we offer our customers are what are known as soft systems. They're mixes of people and technologies. So to me, a key thing is to understand in these very different kinds of components, what are their strengths and weaknesses? So, what is it that we know humans are good at? Well, humans are good at people. If we've specialized in anything as a species, it's getting on with other people. And there's this magic number called the Dunbar Number, after Robin Dunbar, a psychologist at Oxford, which says that most of us operate a world of between 80 and 150 people that we know as individuals, we have relationships with them, and so on. That is an enormously impressive achievement for one of the higher primates. How have we done that? Well, one of the things is we've developed big brains to do a lot of computing, and one of the things that those big brains are used for is language. And I know we've made great strides in speech recognition and language analysis, but actually the best thing on the planet for dealing with language is people. We are superb producers and analyzers of language. So let's use people to do that. And the third thing people are good at is bad arithmetic. People are brilliant at making 2 and 2 equal not 4, but 5, or 7, or if they're really good, 17. And what they do is they listen to a clue from a human being, a tone of voice, they put that together and go, I think this is, is that what you're worried about? Is that why you're angry? Or even, you are angry. And we can do that, and we do it extremely well. Everybody's strengths and weaknesses. There are lots of things human beings are not good at. Here's a list. We're not good at detail. We keep making mistakes. We're not good at repetition and doing the same thing time after time after time. We're not good at statistics and calculation, at actually following rules brilliantly in terms of algorithms. We're not good at multitasking. That's another thing we're not good at. We're not good at scaling up and doing this thousands and thousands of times. And actually, after about 20, 25 minutes, we get tired. We're not good at 24/7. Isn't it amazing? Those are exactly the things that machines are good at. So I think there's a very, very simple as I said, frame for thinking about technologies is what bit of the task is this about? Is it a task that looks like something a machine is going to be good at? Great, let's do that. Is this a bit of the task that looks like a human being is going to be good at? Right, let's use a human being. And let's recognize and reward the human beings for the things that they are good at. If that's the, if you like, the analytic bits, we can ask ourselves, you know, the appropriate use of human beings, the appropriate use of machines. I think there's some big payoffs. One of the things I think the industry has been guilty of for the last 25 years is trying to make human beings pretend to be machines. And I think that's given us lots and lots of problems in terms of engagement, training, you know, you name it. Most of our problems in terms of the people who work in the industry come from trying to make them act as machines. Now let's use the machines to do that, and let's use our people to be people. And
because I see a lot of contact centres that are almost like, you know, factories of phone calls or factories of emails. And it can be a bit demoralising if that approach goes. And, you know, then any business case is always written on, you know, streamlining the factory process, if you like, cutting a few seconds off each call.
Well, if you like, at the core of the industry, there was a kind of fatal flaw, and it was the notion of consistency, which is built on the notion of production lines and manufacturing. And you know, a core thing in communication, in human communication, is that you don't say the same thing in the same way to different people. You talk to a 5-year-old differently than you talk to a 95-year-old or a 55-year-old. You know, you talk to your mum differently than you talk to your sister, and so on and so forth. The notion that you could get good communication and consistency was bound to come to pieces. And I think we now got the opportunity to do that. And I think, if you like, lots of our troubles, both in terms of our employees, the people who work in the industry, and their, you know, turnover rates of 44% per year, which have been quoted this morning, and in terms of customers not being happy, go back to this fundamental flaw of trying to treat human beings as machines, both customers and employees. Now, as I said, having done the analytic bit, there's a creative bit. If we've got these components, can we actually sit down and say, what would be a great customer experience? And then use the components that we've got available to deliver that. Our industry, I think, has been characterized by a lack of imagination, in many cases, a tendency to me too. That is, this is how X does it, right, we'll do it the same way. And that's led to a kind of vanilla flavor where everybody does it the same way. Now, actually, one of the things creativity is about is maybe we should do it differently, and maybe we should be recognized by our particular customer experience. The problem is this involves imagination, inventiveness, sometimes, if you like, pure genius, and I think we've been wanting that. It also involves risk, the fact that it might go wrong, a bit of trial and error, things that we as an industry have been uncomfortable with. As I say, this is the hard bit, so this is the point I'm going to hand over to Ed and say, have we got some case examples where those two things can come together?
Well, before we jump across to Ed, we're going to have a look at the chat room. But I think there were some sort of key learnings from what you said there. Certainly I'm taking away. We need to put the theatre back into phone calls. Look at the call entry, the wow moments, and also how we leave people feeling. That when we look at multi-channel, we need to look at the interchange between the channels, and I certainly think that's where a lot of the pain is, you know, as people switch between one channel and the other. And it's about the appropriate use of technology, in putting technology in the areas where people are not, you know, where people are not good at, and supporting the strengths that people people have, and I think we've been in a lot of areas we try and automate the wrong sorts of areas. Well, we're going to jump across to have a look at the chat room now, where Megan Jones is looking at what people have got in terms of tips and comments. What have you got for us, Megan?
Hi John C. Yeah, the chat room's been really busy today, and this first one actually follows on really nicely from Guy's presentation. It's from Rachel, and she says, we are trying to give our agents more personality to build rapport with customers and have a conversation with them as opposed to just talking at the customer and sounding like robots. Would you agree with this one, Guy?
Absolutely, and I, if you like, part of the theatre bit of that equation is when you talk to people about great experiences they've had, what they will very often tell you about is an agent who understood them and their particular situation, and who then did something that was, if you like, personalised, crafted to respond to them as an individual. And to do that, we've got to trust our agents, and we've got to give them the ability, in a way, to go off-piste. Clearly, there are some frames around that we have to put in place to make sure that's not it doesn't go wrong. But giving the capability, the opportunity to agents to do that, I think is our, in a sense, our next big step.
Brilliant, thank you for that. We've had another tip in from Richard, and he says, we set up a customer experience forum where we meet monthly to review customer satisfaction, performance, compliant reasons and average queue times, and call centre agents are involved in this meeting so we can gauge feedback from all areas. We also perform a mystery shopper customer journey call and during the meeting. Ed, is this something all call centres should be doing? Have you seen much of this out in the field?
Well, bizarrely, I started as a mystery shopper, and it is an awesome way to get that deep, qualitative experience. So this methodology you're doing is fantastic. The challenge is, and it's really the theme of today's webinar, is it's impossible to do that at scale. So if you're an organisation taking hundreds of thousands of interactions, and potentially you've got a problem with a very specific contact reason, it's nearly impossible to find those calls or those emails reliably, and that is where this sort of methodology and governance process works brilliantly with technology.
Brilliant. Okay, we've had another tip in from Claire, and she says we're going back to basics to look at our PIs, which have been in place for a long time, to ensure we're measuring the correct indicators. We're looking at more customer-focused PIs.
And I guess PI there is performance indicator.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would just make a plug for the customer experience equation that I was talking about, which is we've done, and I'd be very happy to talk in more detail about that. We've done these analyses in lots and lots of organizations using what's known as a multiple regression technique, a statistical technique, and those 5 components seem to generate a very high proportion of the variance in why is it that the person is telling you that that was a great experience or it was an awful experience. There will be other factors, but those 5 PIs, if you can capture them, will give you a very good grip on the generality of customer experience.
Brilliant, thank you for that, Guy. We've had another tip in from Jackie, and she says, put yourself through the customer journey on a regular basis and experience it yourself. See how it differs from time to time and agent to agent.
And I think one of the key parts of that is actually listening to calls, not just from the agent talking with the customer, but actually listen to people going through the IVR system. It's absolutely fascinating. You can do it off a lot of telephone systems. It's called trunk side monitoring, and that fascinating insights of people getting frustrated with the IVR system.
Can I jump in though? I think there are dangers with this, and I think there are two dangers to be aware of. One is that if you're doing this to your own organisation, you are not a normal customer because you know all sorts of things. You may not even be aware of what it is that you know that is going to make you be tolerant of or surprised and shocked by things that customers would not. The other one is it reinforces this notion that the customer's journey is what you can hear in the phone call. Before they've got to the phone call, they started their customer journey a long time ago, and it is going to go on. If I give you a little analogy to that, is when you think about flying from A to B, the airlines tell you all about the A to B bit, right? But actually your experience of that journey starts at your front door, and it ends up at the hotel or the house that you go to. And actually the nightmare of flying isn't the flight. It's the 6 hours it takes you to get to the airport and through security and wait in the lounge, and the 9 hours at the other end waiting for your luggage and so on. The danger is that you sample the airline journey.
Yes.
That's not the customer's journey.
No, that's true.
Okay, we've had a question from Gabriella, maybe one for you, Ed, to answer here. How can you coach agents to open each call with a wow moment, even if customers are dissatisfied with the service?
Well, that's a tough one. I was recently with a client who was a complaints team, and they were being measured by for a CSAT score, and they felt it was very unfair that they were being measured on CSAT because every customer was dissatisfied. And I was a complaints manager in it, and my view was pretty simple. You cannot make every customer wow if you're dealing with complaints. What you have to do is incrementally improve where they are, and the most important word is empathy. Is realize that there was, like, I called an organisation the other day. I knew what I wanted. I know call centre people are the worst customers on earth. I wanted them to IDMV me, get onto my account and tell me if I'd registered for a service. Now, to be empathetic, they didn't IDMV me because it's a bad process, and they talked to me for 3 minutes to try and triage me, and I got really annoyed, and their AHT was longer and their CSAT was lower because they were trying to be empathetic. So my advice for Gabriella would be collect examples of dissatisfaction if you can, and obviously this is I'm the technology representative. I believe technology is a great way to do that. If you can coach an agent on 5 examples of how they handle a dissatisfied interaction, it makes it very easy to deliver wow moments. If it's impossible to find a dissatisfied interaction, it's very hard to do.
Can I say, I think there are 2 other answers to this, which is at one level, don't try to open the call with a wow moment. You don't know who the customer is, you don't know their circumstances, you don't know why they're calling you. You can't deliver a wow moment until you know all of know and understand and have thought about those things. So at one level, yes, try to deliver wow moments, but recognize that you've got to wait some time to do that. The other answer to that is the place to deliver wow moments is in the IVR, where you can use theatre, and you can program that and you can deliver it. But remember, it's not going to be fantastic because it's mass-produced, and secondly, it's got a half-life. Because it's great the first time, it's all right the second time. By the third time, it's become irritating. So you can think about theatre, but think carefully and thoroughly about it.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, both of you, and for such an amazing question, Gabriella. We've now got a final tip from Jen. It says, encourage your team members to share good customer experiences. For example, when they have turned around a challenging call into an effective one that's rewarding for the customer, the advisor and the service. To have this acknowledged by others is motivational. And I think that's all we've got time for now, so back to you, John T.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. Well, we're now going to have a look at the second part of the agenda, which is looking at 3 best practice examples of how technology can improve contact center performance. So we'll just pass the baton across to Ed Creasy, who's runs the consulting arm of Nice Systems.
Thank you, and thank you, Guy, for the introduction and the difficult part. So, I'm very proud to use my classics degree. It doesn't happen very often in my job, but I'm going to quote Herodotus, the father of history, who said in the 5th century, the worst pain, BC by the way, the worst pain someone can suffer is to have insight into much and power over nothing. And I have personal experience of this. Before, as I said, I was a mystery shopper. And we created fantastic insight, but the problem was the insight itself, and this was before the multi-channel world, didn't give the company the tools to actually change the experience or measure the changes that they'd made. And now, as I said, we are no longer controlling our customers. Our customers are in control of us. They're using our channels in a way which isn't connected up by us as organizations, and that's why we at NICE believe the machine is critical, to be able to connect up that information so we can understand the customer through those channels. Okay, so there's 3 elements that we look at NICE. There's knowing your customer, and that's that ability to capture all those different journeys the customer's having across all touch points and analyze it. Then there's the ability to act in real time, and that's about taking the right action, giving the right service in real time based on that insight you know. And finally, it's engaging employees, and we've talked about this a lot today, making sure your customer-facing and your non-customer-facing employees are fully engaged, knowledgeable, and motivated. And we're going to take you through an example story today, and this is a telco, a mobile telco, who had a problem with churn. What they wanted to do was improve customer satisfaction and ultimately reduce their churn rate. And what the problem they had with knowing their customer is they had a rich data warehouse where they knew a lot of transactional data. They also had a web service where they knew where everyone hit the web pages, but they weren't connected up at all. Secondly, they didn't know why people called. They had very basic IVR reasons why the customer was calling. So they didn't know much about the customer. Secondly, they didn't have the ability to act effectively in real time. So agent made retention offers based on paper-based. We've all seen it in a contact center. They rifle through the drawer to find the right promotion. So they made paper-based offers. The gut feel was it wasn't the full picture. And the company had grown through acquisition, and the poor agents had 15 different applications to use during the call. Yeah. That is not unusual. So, and on average, I think we're talking 5 to 6 applications are being used. And then finally, the team leaders, when they're trying to coach and improve the employee engagement, had 4 different sources. They could have WFM data, they could have QM data, they had the voice of the customer data. They're different performance sources. Which area would you coach the agent on? So what did the organisation do about this? So we recommend that you know the customer by connecting things up. So what they were able to do is connect up the web data with the survey data with what happened on the call. So they knew the customers who had not logged into their account recently and had expressed dissatisfaction on a call and given them a low score in a survey were the ones with the most propensity to churn. And they knew that before they called in. When they called in, the agent was prompted with a relevant offer. So that actually came up onto their screen, and that was based on the specific customer who called in. So the offer was relevant to the customer, and then the agent was guided through that interaction. So instead of all this copy and pasting, they were guided through the interaction rather than use the paper-based promotion. And then finally, because their focus was retention, the team leaders were given a dashboard of the KPIs around retention to see how their agents were doing. They were able to coach the agents with lower retention rates. They could use best practices from the agents with the highest rates. And they had calls, and I think this is the simplest of them all. They had a set of calls pushed to their desktop where the agents tried to promote and failed, and then they could very easily coach them. So we believe that's the way that you can know your customer, act in real time, and engage your employees. So today I'm going to take you through the suite store, but not the whole suite store. You can see our whole suite store here with lots of different applications. We're going to look at 3. One is customer engagement analytics, that's around measuring the whole customer journey. I'm going to look at a couple of our applications around real-time, that's real-time guidance and real-time speech analytics, and finally around performance management, how we can use better analytics to drive performance management. So let's start off with customer engagement, and I'll show you a little infographic here. This is one of the first challenges is connecting up interactions. So here you've got typical channels. A customer may use voice, mobile, email, and web. I'm sure Guy used those in the last 24 hours getting his transport booked. And one of the first challenge is what we call shared identifiers, because each channel typically the data will be in different places anyway, and in each place the way you uniquely identify a customer will be different. So one of the first things we do with our customer engagement analytics solution is to help organizations connect up a single customer across these different profiles. So for example, if I go onto my mobile phone account and I authenticate myself and log in to see my balance, I will be able to tell the cookie or the IP address of that customer. And then if the next day I go in and just browse the website to make a complaint but I don't authenticate, NICE can still identify that customer, so I can start to connect up web journeys. And once I've authenticated that customer, once I have their account details, I can find all their information about their name, their address, and I can connect that up to when they call in, and connect that up to when they use the app. So the key is to be able to link that customer together, and as you can see from that build, you can create a holistic customer understanding. Link that single customer across many different journeys, and then append the really rich data. So now I identify my customer, I can add segment, tenure, location, credit class to those unique IDs that I have. Then comes the complex bit, is sequencing. So this gives organizations the ability to take thousands and thousands of interactions and link them together. And once they're linked together, you can aggregate them. And that means you can create a KPI, and you can measure the customer journey. I'm going to show you in a minute. It makes more sense for across millions of interactions. I did a project where I analyzed 38 million events. The first one I did, mystery shopping, we did 50. It's like, that's how complex the world is now. Now, when you have all this journey aggregated, you can visualize it simply. So here we have, it could be Guy's journey he had in the last 24 hours, a call, some time on the web, a mobile app, another call, and then an email. And you can visualize that for a single customer. So NICE has got the background with interaction recording. We help our organizations drill down from this very aggregated view right down to the customer journeys. Listen, and like the listeners have said, listen to calls, look at, and listen to, in this case, listen to the whole journey, and you can understand that whole root cause. So let's look at a real example. And this is one from a telecommunications company, and this is how the data looks. So we've taken data from IVR, from SMS, web, survey, voice, and what it's showing us is we've got 14,000 customers here who've called the contact center, and we're looking at the channels that they interacted with before, and then we're looking at the channels that they interacted with 7 days after, 14 days after, 28 days after. And you see some very interesting trends come out. Firstly, the go-to channel is voice. You can see less than 20% of callers actually used any other channel before they called in. The second one, which is very clear, is web is not being used effectively. So only 2.4% actually went to the website after their voice interaction, but they do have a repeat caller problem. So you can see people calling back. It's actually 17% call back within 14 days, and they call back to the voice. So in one simple view, they had an immense amount of data. Imagine all the different channels we're aggregating into one view. And we can filter these by different contact reasons, so you can see it for customers who called about their bill, customers who called with a collections issue, customer called the sales line. And then you can drill down into those interactions very easily. So this is where we are connecting up these multi-channel journeys. So that's knowing the customer better. If we now look at real-time process optimization, I'm going to talk about robots now, which is perfect considering the guy's presentation. So we've got, what can we do in real time with machines? And we have two scenarios to discuss. One is, how do we make the process simpler for agents? And I would suggest that whilst customers are essential, if we get our agents right and make their life easier, it's going to make it a hell of a lot easier for them to make their customers happy. And the second hypothesis here is, do we even need human beings for certain transactions? As we see from the screen here, customers have even more complex requirements. I think we know that, using more channels, using more systems, which means agents are using more systems. And it's not untypical to have an agent using one system for voice, one system for email, one system for chat to deal with their customers. So this all needs to be done more efficiently, and everyone knows CRMs are hard to change, hard to get a new CRM system. And that's where our real-time process optimization comes in. So it's a tool that provides agents with real-time decisioning, screen guidance, and process automation even, to address productivity and knowledge issues. So it's an intelligent decisioning engine, fundamentally. It's not a big IT system. It's very light and sits above IT systems. And it enables organizations to very quickly implement complex business rules. So guidance can be dynamic, It can be rich and personalized to the customer, so you can give specific guidance for the customer that's calling in, or for the agent's skill set, or even for the interaction context. So what, if you hit a particular screen, you can give bespoke guidance based on that. And one of the key things I like is it automates those horrible copy and paste activities that agents are having to do so much of for the agent. So it makes it very easy for those transactions to happen. It also aggregates data. So you'll often see an agent go to many screens to find the information they need. It pulls it all together into one simple screen. And then there's the robot. So here is our robot representative, and this is, so we've used this core technology which was being used to automate during calls, and then we realized there was a lot of other interactions that organizations do, like application forms, where you don't actually have a customer on the end of the phone. Mm-hmm. And we found by using robotics, we can work 2 to 5 times as faster as an agent, and one robot can do the work of 5.6 agents. And to give a case study, now the good news is the agents were reused for more valuable activities here, but it was a bank that automated 4 of their back office processes, and this was a mortgage approval, and they needed 8 robots to do these 4 processes instead of the 80 employees that were doing it before. And if we talk about customer experience, it previously took 14 days with 80 employees, and now it takes 2 days to do it. So you've got technology making the customer experience better. Robots will never replace human beings, but these are 2 examples, one making the agent's life a lot easier, the other one just making transactions a lot quicker, that we think are very effective. Now the other and very dangerous example I'm going to give is real-time speech analytics. As a speech analytics expert, I've been concerned about this area because I believe offline speech analytics is fantastic, and this is probably the leading edge. And the question Guy is posing me is isn't the human being the best person to identify human behaviours? And one would think so, but one of the things we do a lot in speech analytics is look at churn. And I found a lot of calls where customers are saying they want to churn, and agents should hear that. If you're an agent for a telephone company and you say you're going to leave, you should listen. And we found 80% of the calls that we found when a customer said, I want to cancel my contract, the organisation was unaware of. So even though the agent may have heard it, they didn't do anything about it. So what real-time speech analytics in a nutshell does is it constantly searches the stream, the audio stream, for certain key phrases, and then using the real-time tools I've just shown you, it prompts either the agent to take an action, or it can even prompt the supervisor to intercept. Now, it doesn't force people down a prescribed route. It just allows them to make an informed decision. And a really interesting case study we've done recently with a utility in France is an example where if someone, like in the UK, if someone calls in who wants to leave a utility, you don't have to speak to retentions or give your notice. If you call in and say you're dissatisfied, you can put the phone down and then go to the other company. You don't have to leave the company. It's a bit like closing a bank account. No one closes a bank account. They just go to another bank. Yeah. So what we're doing with this organisation is we're looking for those hidden churn indicators and flagging to the agents that there's a risk here. And 2 things have happened that have been interesting. One is versus a control group, we have 1,500% more transfers to retentions, and the AHT's gone down because, of course, these were difficult complaint calls, maybe about bill shock or about a meter reading they were unhappy with, that would go on for a long time. They're intercepting them earlier, and AHT is going down between 10 and 20% because they're being transferred to the agents who can try and save the customers. This is early days. I'm not saying I'm a cynic about real-time speech analytics. I think it's hard because there are some scenarios where it's amazing and there are some human behaviours that are very hard to do. But I would say, Jonty and Guy, watch this space. As we do more of this, I want to share more examples because it's an exciting technology. I think we're on to some survey results now.
Okay, we're going to jump across to a poll. Ed, in a short while, is going to be talking about employee engagement. So just want to ask the question of you, how often do you measure employee engagement in your contact center? Do you do it every year? Do you do it every 3 or 6 months? Do you do it every month, every week, or do you not measure employee engagement in your contact center? So if you'd just like to vote on the poll there. Ed, any guesses of how?
I would say every year.
Every year. Well, let's have a look at the results. 34% do it every year. 25% of the audience don't measure employee engagement. 25% are doing it every 3 to 6 months, 16% every month, and almost nobody is doing it every week on that. So quite a different variety on that. So let's just pass the baton back to Ed, and if you'd like to share with us your thoughts on employee engagement.
Absolutely. This is the last piece of the puzzle for us, and it's how can we engage employees better with technology? And the problem is the limitations of the current state. So, I love QM as my background, but you can only measure with metrics created by humans. So it could be QM or mystery shopping. There's challenges there because of particularly around scalability. The quality of the results is irrefutable. It just doesn't scale. The hard data in the call center, your AHTs, your adherences, your attendances, are very important. They scale beautifully, but they don't tell us much about the customer experience, unfortunately. As I said, the different performance management systems we're giving our team managers are confusing. They're giving different messages. Of what people really need is to see everything in one place, because agents need bespoke coaching. Each agent in your team will want a different coaching because they're at different times in their evolution. The challenge being is it's a lot of effort for a team leader to do that. So the aim is to make that easier. So the challenge we have is how do we deliver a consistent performance management process? And we have three models here. The operating model, I would suggest most people are way beyond now, simply using spreadsheets and offline systems. I would say most people are outperforming now. They're using the capacity planning and forecasting tools and productivity tools to run their contact centers. And unsurprisingly, in advance, said a lot of the solutions I've talked about today. But joking apart, we think some of these are the way to deal with the modern customer challenges effectively around employee engagement. So there's two I want to call out. One is what we call direct, indirect, and inferred voice of the customer, which means to really effectively coach an agent on the voice of the customer, you need three inputs. One is, did the agent provide great service during the call? And that's what interaction analytics is great at. The second is, did the customer perceive it was a good call, which is what Guy talked about earlier. You have to measure that. And thirdly, did the agent take the right actions, which is the inferred data that comes out of your data warehouse. So for example, you could say, did the agent promise a callback, speech analytics? How did the customer feel about that? Surveys. And did the agent actually put the callback in their calendar? Because often you can have a great experience which the customer thought was great, and when they were surveyed 24 hours later, but they never called them back, which effectively. Yeah. So those three pieces of data, I'll just give it a quick screenshot here. This is the integration between nice interaction analytics and FizzBack. So what you've got here is your FizzBack, which is survey data, where you've got you can click on it and you can play your callback for the call that linked to the survey. In the same way within interaction analytics, we're not just categorizing calls based on what was said in the call, but we can say, show me all the interactions where the customer scored me 0 out of 10 and they were expressing dissatisfaction. So it's combining these two together to help coach agents, which we think is the first stage. The second stage, we use our performance management tool, and this is going through the highest level, I believe, the single view of the truth. And here you've got an example dashboard where we are putting all the measures about the agent in front of the team manager. So here you've got the right party contact, you've got the AHT, you've got the first call resolution, you've got your quality scores. And so you can look at different outcomes for different agents. So the aim here is transparency. It's total visibility into what's happening in the organization. Performance management captures all the data from your disparate sources across the organization and gives the single source of the truth. And then you can set goals for every individual based on their specific contact type. So we can see in the last column, it actually suggests the top opportunity for coaching for that agent, and it gives you visibility into how you perform against your peers. The second area is insight. Because all the data is in one place, it's really easy for a team manager to drill into that performance data, and it's really easy to see their movement across segments and across time. And finally, it's motivation. So we provide best practices driven by self-correction, gamification, and collaboration. And really, for me, the key is there isn't one perfect answer to employee engagement. There isn't one perfect application. I believe this is at the top of the Maslow's hierarchy of performance management, to have all the different indicators together and choose the right coaching outcome. That's it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Ed. So some of the key learnings there. Use shared identifiers to help join up the customer journeys, particularly important on multi-channel. So it could be a phone number, a customer number, website cookie. Joining that up is quite critical. Use technology to help make the agent's life better. And technology has got a strong role to play in helping to measure employee engagement, and the voice of the customer plays a key part. Key part within that. We've just got time for, I think, 3 tips on the chat room, so we'll pass across to Megan.
Hi, John T. Yep, just 3 more bites of advice here. One was in from Michael, just saying, a wow moment to me would be when the agent immediately takes ownership for solving my problem. Laura's got a tip that says, we assess calls every week and provide feedback to each agent. Feedback consists of the agent listening to their call in a separate room with the coach, and we ask that they provide feedback on how they have done. We will then coach the agents to help them improve. We have found that relaxing on the handler's AHT has increased motivation and call quality. And a final tip from Rachel, we had a call script which was word for word what they had to say. In recent months, we have changed this to a call guidance with just bullet points of the key points they need to cover and discuss. This way they can put it in their own words and they're not reading off a sheet, which was apparent through their voice. And I think that's all we've got time for now. John T, back to you.
Thank you very much. And I think those last 2 points there, I think, are indicators, Guy, that people are starting to relax on the factory method, average handling time and reading off a script, and starting to bring some of the theatre, bring some of the emotion back into.
And accepting variation. And accepting the need to give agents to be empowered to make real-time decisions, in terms of what they're hearing on the call.
Wonderful. Well, we're almost timed out now. In 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about the webinar? If you'd like to put that into the chat room. Slides are available, as is a webinar recording, on callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. That should be available within about an hour's time, and we'll have recorded highlights, 10-minute highlights, up on Monday. And just like to say thank you very much to our 2 speakers. Guy Fielding, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And to Ed Creasy from Nice Systems.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And if you could complete the survey, the voice of the webinar, if you like, as you leave the webinar, we read through all of those and take the comments very seriously. So thanks very much, and look forward to being online on a webinar with you next week. Thanks then. Bye-bye for all.